Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, in a rare coming together, President Park Geun-hye holds a brief conversation with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of the state funeral of Singapore's founder Lee Kuan Yew. Korea is going to pump an extra $18 billion into long-term fixed-rate mortgages to meet the enormous demand for a new government-backed lending program aimed at tackling the country's snowballing household debts. Plus, DNA belonging to 78 people has been found at the site of the Germanwings air disaster. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, March 30th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, Singapore and the world bid a final farewell to the city-state's beloved founding father, Lee Kuan Yew, on Sunday. President Park Geun-hye, who had maintained close relations with the former Prime Minister, attended his funeral along with dozens of other world leaders. Our Choi Sun starts us off.
Under a heavy downpour, thousands of Singaporeans packed the streets of the city-state on Sunday to express their love and appreciation for Lee Kuan Yew, who died Monday at the age of 91. From the Parliament House, where the body has been laid since Wednesday, the former Prime Minister's coffin made a final tour of the city, the place of Lee's 6 decades-long political legacy. Dozens of former and current world leaders came to pay their respects at the state funeral. President Park Geun-hye, whose special relationship with the former Prime Minister dates back to her father's presidency in 1979, was also there. In the condolence book, she wrote that Lee was a monumental leader whose name will remain forever engraved in the pages of world history. Outside the funeral venue, people gathered at tribute sites across Singapore to remember the statesman recognized for transforming the former British outpost to a global trading and financial hub in just a single generation.
He was a great man. Without him, Singapore will not be what it is today.
What he has done is never expressed in words. We really appreciate. That's why we are here to pay tribute to him.
Even those who didn't support Lee's policies on dissent and public order expressed their appreciation for the leader, adding he was like a very strict father.
As I travel around the world and seeing, other countries and comparing to what Singapore has today, we come to realize that what he did was actually for the best for his nation and for his people.
President Park, who returned to Seoul early Monday, has said she hopes to enhance bilateral ties with current Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong. This as Seoul, with its growth initiatives, seeks to learn from Singapore's rise to a global financial and distribution hub after overcoming similar obstacles like a lack of resources and a complex geopolitical environment. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Now, it's not often that a Korean president attends a foreign leader's funeral, but President Park had a special connection with Lee Kuan Yew, as did her father, the late President Park Geun-hye. Our Gon Soa has more on Lee's special relationship with Korea.
1979 was the year Singapore's first Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew first visited South Korea for a summit with then-President Park Geun-hye. It's also when he met President Park Geun-hye. She was 22 and the acting First Lady. Since then, Lee made a total of 6 visits to Korea, meeting nearly all the Korean presidents that followed. An eyewitness to Korea's rapid industrial and agricultural developments, Singapore's founding father spoke highly of President Park Geun-hye's rural development policies. And the admiration was not one-sided. Former President Lee Myung-bak said he was inspired by Lee Kuan Yew's business philosophy even before his Cheongwade years. But Korean leaders did not always see eye to eye with the former prime minister. Once Lee had a heated debate over the political ideology of Asian values, while he focused on culture, late Korean leader Kim Dae-jung championed democracy. At times, Lee unabashedly criticized Korea's conglomerate-focused economy.
With only 2% of asset holdings, families of Korea's top 30 chaebols have been able to control 331 trillion in assets. Fully control board and management over investment is unjust, it's wrong.
Differences aside, Lee Kuan Yew always remained a friend, nurturing diplomatic and economic cooperation between Korea and Singapore over the years. Korean leaders say he's the driving force behind close bilateral ties to this day. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
At a reception following Lee's funeral, President Park briefly met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. While Prime Minister Abe thanked President Park for making a recent trilateral foreign ministers meeting with China a success, the Korean president said the three countries should take necessary steps to carry out what was agreed at those talks. There had been speculation over what the two leaders might say to each other in Singapore, as they haven't yet held official talks amid strained bilateral ties over historical and territorial differences. She also met with Chinese Vice President Lee Kuan Yew. Both expressed hopes for closer coordination on the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, following Korea's announcement last week that it would join. Japan is seeking to hold an informal meeting with other members of the long-stalled six-party talks on North Korea's nuclear program by the end of June. Reports say Japan is hoping to bring together representatives of the talks when the next Northeast Asia Cooperation Dialogue is held in Tokyo. The dialogue, hosted by a US research institute, brings together senior government officials from the countries involved in the six-party talks, namely China, Russia, the two Koreas, the US and Japan. The six-party talks, last held all the way back in 2008, are aimed at dismantling North Korea's nuclear program. At the upcoming Cooperation Dialogue meeting, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is also reportedly seeking to make progress on the issue of Japanese nationals abducted by Pyongyang decades ago. An official at the US Defense Department has admitted that the country's missile defense system known as THAAD could be more reliable. The Pentagon's Director of Operational Test and Evaluation, Michael Gilmore, says the system has not shown a steady increase in its ability to shoot down ballistic missiles in their terminal phase. He noted some cases where the system actually malfunctioned in poor weather conditions. Gilmore also said more training is needed for the troops who operate and maintain THAAD, but operational needs and a lack of resources are falling behind demand. Now, the US has been pushing South Korea to deploy a THAAD battery here, saying it will better protect the country against North Korea's ballistic missile threats. South Korea and Vietnam have initialed their free trade agreement following a series of bilateral trade negotiations completed late last year. Korea's trade ministry said on Sunday that the deal was done in Seoul on Saturday. The two countries aim to formally sign the trade pact within the first half of the year and put it into effect before the year is out. Under this deal, Korea and Vietnam will remove import tariffs on more than 90% of trade items except rice, which is a sensitive item for Korean farmers. The Trade Ministry expects the deal to help Korea's small and mid-sized businesses, particularly those in textiles, auto parts and electronics, to expand their exports to Vietnam. Korean manufacturers are feeling pretty positive about their business conditions for the upcoming quarter. According to a poll of more than 3,000 companies by the Korea Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade, the Business Survey Index for the manufacturing sector has risen 19 points from the previous quarter to 110 for the April to June period. A reading above 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists, and the survey attributes the positive outlook to favourable conditions at home and abroad, namely the US economic recovery and a rate cut by the Bank of Korea earlier this month to a record low of 1.75%. The Korean government is pumping an additional $18 billion into a new program that allows mortgage borrowers to switch to low, fixed-rate loans as part of efforts to tackle the country's snowballing household debt. The Financial Services Commission says the second phase of the program will prioritize borrowers in the low-income bracket after the first loans were snapped up in a matter of 4 days last week. Authorities expect the new program will help borrowers lower their household debt by allowing them to repay their loans over a longer period of time. And these new mortgage rates are between 2.5 and 2.7%. That's lower than the 3% range previously offered. Korea's total household debt of roughly $900 billion is seen as a big stumbling block to boosting consumer spending and reviving the economy. Now, for this week's Industry Insight, we delve into Korea's hotel industry. And world-famous hotel chains may have an edge in Seoul when it comes to brand recognition, but when it comes to customer preference, the winner is not an international franchise. And as our Song Ji-sun tells us, there's a new trend towards diversification in the industry that's helping local chains weather some unexpected changes.
Korea has its fair share of global luxury hotels. But when it comes to selecting a venue for celebrity weddings or hosting VIPs, it's the local chains that shine. In the latest survey on preferred hotel brands, local chains like Silla and Lotte came out on top over internationally renowned brands.
The service standards set by global brands may not necessarily reflect the unique service expectation and culture of the local users. On the other hand, local brands like Silla and Lotte have spent many years researching the specific needs and preferences of Korean guests and fine-tuning the product to their needs.
Domestic hotel chains also have an advantage when it comes to revamping their facilities. They have a proven revenue stream that's separate from the hospitality side of the business.
Korean hotels may be better known for hosting VIP guests like foreign leaders and providing venues for celebrity weddings. But the big money doesn't come from room rates or from the high-profile functions. Most of the revenue actually comes from their duty-free businesses.
Lotte and Silla dominate the local duty-free market, and they're also expanding overseas to airports in Singapore and Guam. They've also been quick to get a jump on a different segment of the local hotel market. The two domestic chains are building new mid-range and business hotels, catering to visitors seeking budget rooms with quality services. And given that Korea's hotel industry is expanding by the year, especially with the rapid rise in the number of Chinese tourists to Korea, the hotel room supply is expected to fall short of demand, especially in the capital. Experts say these moves to diversify are helping the industry become more resilient, but they also point out that the local chains must prepare for changes in the market, like the recent drop in the number of Japanese tourists to Korea on the back of the weekend. They encourage hotels to devise strategies for attracting visitors from a variety of countries to mitigate the volatility in the industry. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following on this Monday morning from Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. Some encouraging news to start us off today. Search teams and forensic teams are making good progress despite difficult conditions in the French Alps, with about half of the Germanwings victims now identified. A lead investigator said a team of 50 doctors, dentists, and police specialists have isolated 78 DNA strands from recovered body parts, of which hundreds were collected over some 5 days. Not a single body was found intact. As crews worked on slopes of up to 60 degrees with falling rocks, the search for the second black box, the flight data recorder, continued. A road was also being built to the crash site to allow grieving relatives of the 150 on-board Germanwings flight 9525 access. Meanwhile, German media over the weekend reported the 27-year-old co-pilot Andreas Lubitz likely had severe subjective overstress symptoms. One senior investigator told a German daily a number of medications were found at his apartment. A German tabloid, Bild am Sonntag, carried an interview with a purported ex-girlfriend who said Lubitz had said he had spoken of a plan to execute a spectacular gesture so everyone will know my name and remember it. The debate over pilotless planes has been revived with the emergence of evidence suggesting Germanwings Flight 9525 may have been crashed by the co-pilot on purpose. For more on what it would take to get a pilotless plane off the ground, Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Speculation that a 27-year-old co-pilot intentionally crashed a plane has led some to question whether planes might be safer without pilots. Advocates of the idea say that if planes were fully automated, the tragedy of Germanwings Flight 9525 could have been averted. The co-pilot has reportedly prevented the captain from re-entering the cockpit after he left, before sending the plane into a descent that led to the crash. The disaster has already led to calls in Europe for a rule requiring that 2 pilots be in the cockpit at all times. Self-flying aircraft that can be controlled from the ground are not entirely new. Drones have been used for military missions for years. The U.S. military flies Global Hawk drones nearly the size of a Boeing 737 passenger jet, and Boeing says it's developed fully automated planes to prevent hijackings. But barriers remain to get the technology off the ground. For one, insurers are unlikely to cover commercial planes that fly without pilots due to the potential unreliability involved. Then there are labor unions, which are concerned that self-flying planes will leave pilots without jobs. Critics also say self-flying aircraft have their own problems, including an increased vulnerability to hacking. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
On to other news now. Exit polls in France's local elections, seen as a barometer of what's to come in 2017's presidential election, show the conservative UMP party in the lead. The UMP party is led by former President Nicolas Sarkozy and was poised to secure more than 60 council seats, according to that exit poll, which is up from the 41 previously projected. Marine Le Pen's far-right National Front also looked to have made gains, while the ruling socialists and their allies stood to lose as many as 30 departments. Sarkozy said the results showed voters had rejected the policies of incumbent President François Hollande. And finally, negotiations are reaching the final stretch in Switzerland, where Iran and the 6 world powers are seeking a deal to curb Tehran's nuclear activities that would also roll back crippling economic sanctions. Western officials involved in the talks said Iran is open to cuts to its uranium enrichment program, but is pushing back on the length of time it would be required to limit its technology that could lead to make atomic bombs. They are 2 days away from a self-imposed deadline to agree on a framework with a comprehensive deal aimed for in June.
Now, scientists from Korea and the US have released some promising new research on the treatment of autoimmune disorders. The research focuses on T-cells, which adjust the body's immune system and prevent it from attacking its own cells and tissues. Our Son Jung-in reports.
A team of co-researchers from the Korea Research Institute of Bioscience and Biotechnology and Harvard Medical School believes that regulatory T-cells formed right after birth may be the key to suppressing autoimmune disorders.
Regulatory T-cells in a newborn baby are much more effective in tackling autoimmunity or metabolic disease. This new discovery could be the key in developing treatment for cell disorders.
The researchers confirmed that newborn T-cells are much more effective than T-cells produced in adulthood. Regulatory T-cells are suppressive cells that are essential to modulate the immune system. A deficiency of these cells can lead to the development of autoimmune disorders where the body attacks its own cells and tissues, for example, type 1 diabetes or thyroid disease. The researchers experimented on mice with organs damaged by an autoimmune disorder. Mice injected with newborn regulatory T-cells showed significant recovery, whereas mice injected with adult regulatory T-cells showed no signs of improvement. They also found that regulatory T-cells from newborns had more vitality and movement, reflecting higher suppression abilities in the autoimmune system. The team anticipates this discovery will serve as a turning point for the development of cell disorder treatments and may also advance research on anti-aging medicine. The results of the study were featured in the March issue of the medical journal Science. 손정인, Arirang News.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off in rhythmic gymnastics, where Son Yeon-jae went into our first World Cup of the season in Lisbon with 4 new performances for the new season. And not a bad start to the new season as the 21-year-old finishes 3rd in ribbon, clubs, and hoop competitions, but finishes 5th in the ball event as she would finish off with a total score of 72.050 points, good for 4th in individual all-around. But earlier today, she adds her first medal of the season as she finishes with 18.050 in the hoop final, winning a silver in the event for her 12th straight medal finish. And while the rhythmic gymnastics season just kicked off, the 2014-2015 figure skating season came to an end with the conclusion of the World Figure Skating Championships in Shanghai. And for the Korean figure skaters, it was a season of ups and downs. Now, season would come to an end with Park So-yeon finishing 12th overall in the World Championships after a final score of 160.75 points, while Kim Hae-jin would finish off her event, finishing in 19th place after scoring 136.24 points overall. Now, both skaters did improve from last year's World Championships, but still can't seem to improve enough to compete with some of the world's best and fulfill the expectation as the next Kim Yeon-ah. At the young age of 17, there's still time for improvements as they hope to wow the fans during the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. And speaking of championships, we go over to Game 1 of the best-of-7 KBL Championship Series between the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus and the Wonju Dongbu Promi, as Mobis look to take a one-game en route to their 3rd straight title. But Dongbu using their famous defense early in the game as they take a slim 18-17 lead after the first quarter before Mobis' offense come alive in the second quarter of the game as they outscored Dongbu 21-11 to take a 38-29 lead going into halftime. But Dongbu keeping it close, making sure Mobis doesn't run away with the game, but it's Mobis' defense in the fourth quarter holding their opponents to just 8 points in the fourth as Mobis takes Game 1 64-54. Now more championship series, this time over to the Women's V-League Championship Series as the IBK Altos went into Game 2 with a 1-0 series lead over Korea Expressway. Now Game 2 IBK off to a great start once again, take the first set 25-21, but Korea Expressway answers back with a 25-20 second set victory. But despite Nicole Fawcett putting up a game-high 34 points, IBK's Destiny Hooker, Park Geun-hye, and Kim Hee-jin all scored double digits as IBK cruises through the rest of the way with a 3-1 victory, as they're now one win away from another championship title. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning, I'm Lee Kuan-yew here with your latest weather updates. It feels like we're going through 2 seasons in just one day. A chilly and breezy morning is turning into warm afternoon, and it seems like that unseasonably warm highs will continue today with top temperatures hovering 20s across the nation. But some of the western coastal areas and inland regions are waking up to very foggy morning. The visibility is about 50 meters in Incheon and 300 meters in Seosan in Chungcheongdo province, so people in those regions need to be extra careful when hitting the roads this morning. And the high level of fine dust continues in some parts this morning as well, including here in Seoul, but it's forecasted to go back to the normal range as the day progresses, and we'll get to bask under mostly sunny skies. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low here in Seoul is kicking off at 7, but later on will jump up to 20, and Daegu and Gwangju Jeju will peak at 24 and Busan will top out at 19 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 19 and 23. Dokdo peaks at 15 while Mount Keungang rises to 11. Beware of big temperature gaps between lows and highs and dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. Well, that's all for the weather. Have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you very much, Jion, for the weather. And that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour. Have a wonderful day and do stay tuned to Arirang TV. Goodbye.